everybody, this is Christiana coming to you live from the Longmont Yarn Shop. It is a little after 5 o'clock, sorry. And it is February 28th. Oh my gosh, March is tomorrow. I can't believe that. So tonight we have something super exciting for you. We have Shannon from Yarn Baby here for our very first ever Fiber at 5 with one of our favorite local indie dyers. So, oh, Peggy. Hi, Peggy. So, without further ado, I'm going to step aside and let Shannon talk to you about her wonderful yarn. So, thanks, Shannon.
Hello! Happy Sunday evening. I brought some colorways today to show you guys. All of these, as I posted on Facebook a few minutes ago, were dyed to correspond with other colorways of the same base. So I will just start over here with the, if you follow me on social media stuff, you know that I finished my striped honeycomb hat from Stephen West recently. It's my favorite. This is for me. I'm glad I got this done before we had another big snowstorm. So for this project, I used my Percy DK base. And as soon as I saw this design, I loved the stripes because I can make them black and white stripes. Love black and white stripes on like everything. I don't know. That's why I like Beetlejuice. That's why I like Moira Rose and Schitt's Creek and all of her black and white, and same with David. Like, I love black and white stripes. So I wanted to make this black and white stripes, but I was trying to figure out what colorway to coordinate with it. I was going to do a screaming bright pink. At the time, my hair was a screaming bright pink, so I thought maybe that would be a bit much. So I went to my, fallback, which is kind of a teal color. So that is what I had in mind with these colorways. So I have charcoal, and then this is just nude. So this is what I used for my black and white stripes. The charcoal is just a dark gray. It's not black, it's not a light gray, it's just dark, and it's semi-solid, so it's kind of a tonal. There are darker sections and lighter sections, but it's pretty even. And so those two were my stripes. And then for the other color for this, I brought Caboodle. Caboodle is the same dark gray as in charcoal. And it has the same, there's some white in it that matches with the nude. But it has some minty greens as well as some dark teal and some raspberry pink with some dark raspberry pink. And I thought that this colorway would look great for the main color of the beanie, but it also would look great if you used this, I think, inside the honeycombs and then used a charcoal or a nude to do the outline of the honeycombs. Anyway, I just thought that was a fun color combination. I used 3 different colors for mine, so I brought 3 different colorways that could be mixed and matched in different ways. So you could totally do the brim and the outline of the honeycombs in the charcoal and then put Caboodle inside the honeycomb, or you could do your black and white stripes if you're crazy about the black and white stripes like I am. And that's the first ones. Those are the 3 colorways that I brought that are on Percy DK. But of course, I mean, you could use these for any pattern that calls for DK weight yarn. And this is the Caboodle. I'll just run over those again quickly. So we have charcoal, nude, and Caboodle. This was named Caboodle. Bryce was asking about my colorway names. This is named Caboodle because it reminded me of, I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s, so those little makeup containers that everybody had mine was black and white with bright pink, more black and white with bright pink. But I think my sister had, and that was like a mint green.
I'm scooching this just a little closer because someone said they can't hear you.
Am I too quiet? I'm not a quiet person, so that would be shocking. So yeah, this is named Caboodle after those makeup containers. Because do you still have one? I have no idea if mine could still be at my parents'. I'm not sure. But now it would be used for like stitch markers and crochet hooks or, knitting needles and yeah. Anyway, so that's why this is named Caboodle. That mint green with the gray and the pink. It just reminded me of those. So That is what I've got on Percy DK tonight. And my striped honeycomb beanie, which is by Stephen West. The next base and colorways that I brought are on Willy USA. My Willy USA base is what I used to make this sweater. This sweater is the Glacier Tunic by Hohi. This was my first project that I made, that I finished in quarantine. And I don't remember how many yards and stuff that I used, but I mean, probably aren't very many people out there that are the same size exactly as me anyway. But I used my Willy USA base to make this design. It's longer. You could use less yarn by making the sleeve shorter or making the sweater shorter. It's pretty long. Hides the hiney. Goes all the way down. It's a long little tunic.
And Lisa wants to know what the yardage of the, just one skein of the yarn that you use for it.
For this?
Yes.
Okay, this is a Willy USA base, so the each skein is 434 yards per skein. That's a good question if you're figuring out the yardage for your. That's true. These are 246. I should have said that, huh? The Percy DK. These are 246 yards per skein. Okay, the Willy USA. So this is what I brought. This is your blushing, and it is a raspberry pink again with a chestnut brown. The chestnut brown kind of has a lot of this raspberry color in that dye color. Sometimes when the dye breaks, it breaks way more maroon than it does brown. So I have these, and to pair with that, I dyed some semi-solid of the raspberry to use in case somebody wanted contrasting colors or complementary colors. I guess that's not contrasting. Complementary colors to go with your blushing. And I also dyed freckles to go along with that too. If you had a design or something you wanted to make that has the 3 different colors. It's probably not really a fade, but they all have similar colors in them. So this has the raspberry pink as well as the brown. And this is the chestnut brown with speckles of the darker brown. In this right here, you can kind of tell where like the maroon kind of raspberry accents that are in this brown color and this chestnut brown color. So this colorway, and on this base, the base is called Willy USA. It's an 80-20 superwash merino fiber blend. There's 434 yards per skein. This base is made in America, so the sheep are American and it's spun together in America, and that's why it's named Willy. I just kind of felt like that. I don't know, American.
Gloria was saying your yarn looks good enough to eat.
I mean, this looks like raspberries with chocolate on them, kind of. I know, I was going to name it maybe something like that. So, you know, raspberries and chocolate. So, yeah, anyway, and the colorways, these ones that go together, all on the same base. You're blushing, freckles, and this one is, I forgot. I think Sweet Nothings. Yes, Sweet Nothings. In case you want a project with 3 different colorways or not. You know, that's all there too. I also brought Camelot. It's one of my favorite dye colors. This is the one that I have to dye, like I need to buy more of all the time. This color. So this is Camelot and this is Guinevere. Okay, I dyed Guinevere to go with Camelot. You probably get the reference. So there is the same dye colors in, you know, a lot of times people ask me when they get something that's slightly variegated if there is a complementary tonal to go with it. So that's what I had in mind when I came up with these. So Guinevere being more unique, I'll tell you about this one for a little bit. It has the dark teal, it has the same brown as in those other colorways, and then it has speckles of a earthy green, like an avocado green, also rusty orange, and it's kind of more like a rusty, it's gold. There are some orange colors in there. And there's navy blue speckles that actually look more like black. So there's a lot of different colorways going on in here, but I had it in mind to be paired with Camelot. And then I noticed that it kind of also pairs with freckles if you needed 3 colorways. I seriously love this rusty orange color. That's the other colorway that I have to buy a lot more of because I use it a lot. And this dark teal forest greenish color. So here's Guinevere and Camelot. And those are the colorways that I have on the Willy USA base. It's a sock weight base. What I used to make the sweater. I'll tell you those colorway names one more time. You're Blushing, Sweet Nothings, Freckles, Camelot, and Guinevere. And then I have brought one more base for today. For this base, it's a new base to my shop, so I haven't made tons of things with this base. The things that I have made, I ended up giving away. But I'm working on a project right now, so I just brought it unfinished. This is the Salem Sport, my Salem Sport base. It is a sport weight with 2 strands held double. It makes a lovely worsted weight. And holding the 2 strands double does funky things with the colors when it's a variegated yarn, and I am just loving that. This is going to be a beanie for my son because, oh, I just found a pearl that should be a knit. Well, what do you know? This is going to be a beanie for my son because this magenta color is his favorite color. So this is the Salem Sport, and I'm just using one cake of it, and I pulling from the center of the cake as well as the outside to hold my 2 strands double. And the Salem Sport is a sport weight that is 100% superwash merino. It has 325 yards per skein.
Are you using a particular pattern for that?
No, this I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I'm just doing a 2x2 ribbing, and then eventually when I think it's long enough that he could fold it over, I'll just stop and knit. A basic, just a very basic. He's a child who's gonna probably mess this up or lose it or something. So I didn't go for a fancy pattern. For that beanie, I used this one, and this beanie is mine. So for the colorways that I brought on Salem Sport, I had this peacock colorway, which is kind of a mix between a sky blue and a teal. It's a really pretty shade of blue. It's not like a sky blue. It just has a little bit of teal in it. So I wanted something maybe a little bit wild to be paired with it. So I dyed this. This is Aloha, because I felt like it was sending off some tropical holiday vacation vibes, and who hasn't been dreaming about stuff like that since we've all been cooped up at home where it's not easy to travel or fly to Maui or anything. So this is the same base. It has yellows, it has the same peacock blue, purples and pinks, and then some speckles of black for good measure because I can't resist adding black to a lot of colorways. Yes. Bryce relates. Yes. So these pair nicely together, Aloha and Peacock, but I also dyed another one to go with this pairing in case somebody wanted 3. And I forgot any. Oh, Tropical Sunset. So I was kind of going, for vacation, warm getaway theme. So Tropical Sunset. I was trying to come up with a name for this colorway, and my husband was Googling images from Maui or something. And when the sun was going down, there was the one that matched this perfectly. So we named this one Tropical Sunset to go with Peacock as well as Aloha. They're crazy and wild. Another option on the Salem Sport is Take Me Away. Anything with turquoise makes me think. I don't really snorkel or scuba dive, but the crystal clear water where you go down and see all these colorful corals always reminds me of turquoise. So I added these speckles in there. There are teal speckles as well as lime green and some of this same pink color. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but there are speckles of this bright pink inside of the Take Me Away colorway. And those are on Salem Sport. I think when I was here last time, which was early COVID times, I had Christiana made this. Look at it. And I think this is the same base as Salem Sport, but I'm not positive. But I think it feels the same. So I'm just showing you because just another example of gorgeous stuff. This is Tunisian Crochet. And so Tunisian Crochet can kind of make a thicker fabric. It uses a lot of yarn. As she was saying, it's a yarn sucker for real. But with this weight of the yarn, it's still like really drapey and snuggly, even though this is a fairly thick kind of fabric. Anyway, this is gorgeous. And it looks great in that base. If it's not that base, it was something very similar. It feels similar. And that's what I have. Are there any questions?
I know I already sold some yarn. That brown and purple, or brown, pink and purple.
This one?
Yep.
You're blushing?
And then someone asked if there was any black, white, and gray shades that you brought with you today. I don't think so.
No, there's not. No, there's not black and white and gray. There's just the charcoal and the nude, but not in the same skein. Is that what they meant?
Yeah, in the same skein, I think.
Yeah, and I don't have anything that's a total black. Dyeing yarn that is mostly or entirely a dark black has not been a positive experience for me. If you saw the sweater that I made for my husband, I forgot the name of that pattern. It's another West Knits pattern. And the body of it is black, or a black tonal. When I was making that, it was leaving black all over my hands. So I pulled those skeins from my shop because that's not okay. And then I ended up making his whole thing and then putting it back in hot water with some more citric acid to try and condense to get those dye particles back on that yarn. So dyeing completely black skeins or even really dark it's tricky. So I don't have that. Just charcoal and nude together. And there is those same colorways in the caboodle.
How did you come up with the names Percy and Salem and...
How did I come up with my yarn-based names?
Yeah.
Percy, DK, I was looking up names of witches and wizards, and Percy came up, and my son at the time was reading the Percy Jackson series of books.
That's what I was wondering.
So
Percy Jackson.
it was kind of in my brain. And then, like he'd finish a book and then we watched the movie or something like that. So in terms of magical, that was already in my mind at the time when I was naming this base. So that is where Percy, DK, came from. The Willie USA base is because, I think I kind of already said that. This is a Made in America yarn. So Willie and William felt like an American sounding name, so this was Willie USA. And then for Salem, I was just, something with witchy vibes. And you can't really, Salem, Massachusetts. We went there back when we could travel. So a couple years ago, we went to Salem, Massachusetts because, it's Salem, Massachusetts. And it was awesome. I would love to go there again. And so I just named this Salem. We got a new dog, and that was also on the name, as possibly like naming our pet Salem, but she's a girl, and we went with Aspen. So anyway, in the puppy stories, yeah, that's those bases.
Someone asked if the Willie USA is not for Willie Nelson.
Okay, it's for Willie Nelson. I mean, he's an all-American guy, right? So it works. Why not? Willie Nelson. Sure. He wasn't like the front of my mind, but everybody knows Willie Nelson, and he's, an American legend. So I'm sure he was knocking around in my brain. That works.
What was the name of that hat pattern again?
This is striped honeycomb hat or honeycomb striped hat.
Stephen West?
Yeah, Stephen West from West Knits. If you did his, I did his knit along in October this year. It was the first mystery knit along that I've ever done. And that shawl pattern started out with these honeycomb, which was a trip. Yeah, I had no idea what I'm making. My first mystery knit along, and I get it done. I'm like, look at this. This thing is like wild. So when he released it in the beanie with the DK weight, I was like, ooh, I need myself a beanie anyway. And even when you turn it inside out, it still looks awesome with the black and white stripes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's a fun textured piece because you can tell there's like an inside and there's an outside. So it looks really trickier than it is because I was telling them earlier, I've only been knitting about 3 years. I started with crochet, and this was not, it wasn't difficult. It was, super fun to make. I really like Stephen West's designs.
We have a Facebook friend that's asking, what is your favorite weight to work with?
My favorite weight? I don't think I have a favorite weight. I want to be familiar with everything that I sell, so I try to use all of my bases. The only one that I haven't made multiple projects with is Salem because it is fairly new. So that's part of the reason that I'm using that for the beanie for my son. And because I had made a beanie with that base previously and I did hold 2 strands double and it did such fun things with the colors in it with the 2 strands held double. I wanted to have another one that I could photograph to show people what that's kind of like. So, and if it was like a colorway with a lot of different colors like this, I think the 2 strands held double would do something similar to this in terms of the pattern it creates. But I don't think I have a favorite. I like worsted and because you get things done quickly. So sometimes you want something quick. But this was a whole stinking sweater in sock weight. And when it's done, I love it because it's drapey and yum. And I made a cardigan also from Hohi with a even thinner sock weight. Making it takes a long time, but when it's done, it's just more drapey and lovable. So I don't really have, and then DK is like a middle. I don't have a favorite base or weight.
So we've got a couple more questions for you. Terry's asking how long you've been dyeing.
I started dyeing in 2013. So however many, and I was talking to Bryce about this earlier. My mom taught me how to crochet, and then I had to replace my son's blanket that was falling apart when he was an infant. And that got me into crocheting, and then I started venturing out into different types of yarn, and I had bought some hand spun yarn, and I just thought it was incredible. And I was like, how do they spin yarn? There's like spinning wheels still today. Like, I'm thinking Sleeping Beauty, like what? So then I jumped down that rabbit hole and I took a spinning class at a local yarn shop, and I bought a spinning wheel and started spinning my yarn. But then I wanted to start dyeing my own roving. So I started dyeing roving that I then wanted to spin. And then I was kind of like, I have all these dye colors and stuff now too. I could dye yarn. And so that really kind of picked up in around 2013, 2014 with the yarn probably. So for a while, and I just did it in my kitchen, in my house for a lot of years. We had an unfinished basement in our house that we finished a few months ago, and so we built a dye studio down in my basement. So now I have my own personal space for my dye studio in our basement, and I have an office upstairs where I put everything once it's dyed and ready to ship and things like that.
Jolene wants to know, will you ever do a bulky or super bulky weight?
I don't sell a lot of super bulky when I've had it. That's why I don't have a base like that. I think people hesitate, are reluctant with that base in terms of hand spun or hand dyed because it is more expensive when it's hand dyed, but it's also never very many yards. So it'd be like 109 yards, and then I think that turns people off to it. So I don't typically routinely carry a bulky or super bulky weight base.
Jolene says that's fair. That makes sense.
Thanks for understanding.
I don't think so. Great.
Good?
Yay. Wonderful. I don't think we have any more questions. Is there a favorite? I have a question though for you.
Okay.
What is your favorite color? I know that has to be hard.
My teal. Teal is my, any sorts of blues and greens mixed together is a weakness of mine. But then I also kind of like pinks because I feel like that I look better in pink, which is why I kind of dyed my hair pink and stuff. Not that I'm drawn to it when I see it, but I feel like when I put it on, people are like, you look nice in pink. So then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should like pink. But my favorite colors to dye are what's here on Guinevere, this dark teal and this rusty orange. It just screams autumn. And I love autumn and fall.
I know that looks like it needs to be a cardigan or something.
And then I'm like all Taylor Swift's cardigan song.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, right?
And then I have another question for you.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite dyeing technique? Anything that you really...
A favorite dye technique? When I was dyeing upstairs in our kitchen, I would do ice dyeing, which was really fun. And that was easy because my refrigerator was right there. So I could scoop up cubes of ice and put them on the yarn and then put dye on top of that. And that was really cool. That's fun. It's harder for me to do now when I'm in the basement in our dye studio because I don't have that super duper easy access to ice where it's at now. But I really like speckling. I like experimenting. Sometimes putting dye in the pan before I put the yarn in. Sometimes putting the yarn in and then the dye on top of that. Or mixing different colors to see how well they get along, which has been a lot of trial and error because not all colors look well together. No, some of them are really horrendous when they're together.
You should sell your mess ups.
I sometimes I'll be like, oops, this is an oops. I have a Lancelot skein right now that I don't know where it got the yellow on it, but it has like this, it's like this nice white with speckles, and then it has this weird like yellow stain. I don't even know where that came from, but
Courtney says that her son also likes to chew on her knits, especially now that he's teething.
My son it was like his snuggle thing. They would seriously like rub it on their faces and get their little baby fingers stuck into the loose stitches and their toes and just kind of play with it and really like rub it. Yeah, he had to have a crochet blanket. That was his. And he's now 14, and he has that one worn out. We went and picked out some yarn. I made him another one. He still has that one. But as you can imagine, it's been loved to almost death. It's just this straggly, but he still has it.
That's so cute. And then Terry said that the way the colors on your sweater are blending, says it reminds her of Starry Night.
Oh, thank you.
And then Christy wants to know, do you let your kids ever dye with you? How do they inspire your dyeing process?
I have some dyeing kits in my shop that use the dye tabs from Easter egg dye kits, which that time's coming up again. I let my kids do that because that is a really condensed little pill of dye but the powders that I use, I've never let them use those. Because I don't want to clean up after them. And if you spill that, it's a powder. It's a fine powder. Some of them are more fine than others. Different colors have very different textures of their dye, but I just really don't want to clean up after them. So we've done Easter egg dye kits and stuff with my kids, and then they kept their yarn. Other than that, that's about all that I've done with my kids. But it was fun.
So fun. Christy thought that was a very funny response.
I don't want to clean up after them.
Yeah.
totally don't.
I understand that. Yes. Having used powder dye, yes, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that could go. Imagine like dyeing your Easter eggs with if it was a powder. No thanks.
No thanks.
Those really condensed little tablets. That's fine.
I don't think we have any more questions at the moment. So I'm trying to think if I have any more questions for you. Now I have you as a captive person.
Did you have me on the spot?
Yeah.
I can ask her anything. She's live.
I think I asked you all my real questions, all my technique questions. I would ask
I
you.
have a question.
Okay.
Other than black, what is the next hardest color to dye?
Pinks are not a friend to any dyer. If they tell you otherwise, I don't think they're being truthful. Pink likes to bleed and 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 bleed. Like it won't. Most colorways, you can put the wool into your pan and you can dye it, and you let it sit long enough, and you have your citric acid in there, and you pull it out, and the water is clear. Pink is really reluctant to be friends with the wool. It will go on there and it will soak it up like these. But I rinsed these more than I have rinsed any colorway in probably a year. And it just wants to keep drizzling a little bit. So pink is tricky. Pink's probably the trickiest. Sometimes turquoise will take a longer time to actually adhere to the wool, but it just needs more time, and it will usually, work out better. But I'd say any shade of pink.
So going on the opposite end, what's the easiest color to dye?
Yellow's kind of a brat too, if I'm going to be honest about that one. Because it gets chunks in it, and then it doesn't want to break, and so then it's for a different reason. It's kind of a pain for a different reason. And then it just won't dissolve into the yarn, and then it's, okay, the easiest is, yeah, the yellow dye has kind of chunks in it. Every dye color is a different texture, and some of them even have a smell. I noticed I started wearing my more hardcore mask. I don't understand the chemistry behind it. I did not major in chemistry. I'm more of a former music teacher, creative. Yeah, I know. I saw that about you too, that you played clarinet. Yeah, so I'm more of the creative side of this and don't understand a lot of the science behind it. But the dye colors are all formulated so differently. Some will be a very fine powder. Some are thicker. It's kind of like a brown sugar versus a sugar versus a baking soda. All of those little powders have different textures, and that's true with different dye colors. So some of them will speckle better. Black speckles, navy blue speckles really, really well. And some of them, the yellow, it's a chunky little thing that doesn't like to break up. But in terms of a color that's easy, almost all the rest of them are quite easy.
Valerie says you have a beautiful color sense.
Oh, thank you.
And I have to agree with that. Even just this palette on the table really works well together.
There was a lot of trial and error early on.
Yeah.
And you need to, and becoming familiar with different colors and how they coordinate with other colors. Now I know there are some colors, there are some purples that don't get along. They don't have many friends on the color wheel in terms of my dye. Or lime green. Lime green likes to just not get along with stuff too, but I like a splash of lime green. Just have to be careful that it doesn't mix with pink. It doesn't work out.
What color would that make, lime green and pink?
It's like a weird brownish, accidental,
Yeah.
orangish, brownish, which is fine in and of its own if you're going for an earthy tone skein of color. But usually if you're using those two colors, you're going for something bright and vibrant, more like this or something like that. And then if you have some earth tone in a skein like this, no. Wasn't my intent.
So do you normally think of a color first, and then you come up with a name, or do you ever come up with a name first and then see if you can capture color?
Almost always the color is first, and then I come up with a name.
That's fine.
Especially if I'm going, I hardly ever go in with a plan unless I'm doing something that I've repeated before. No, I will usually put color on the yarn and then think what goes well with that if I'm doing more than one color. And then that's why I feel like, which maybe other people who watch me don't agree with this, but this I feel like is classic Shannon colorway. Because I'll put in like this green and I'll be like, what goes with that? Oh, that rusty orange, because I'm such a sucker for those dye colors. Or the brown, and then sometimes I'm like, well, it needs a splash of something, so then what will I go with that? So it's just being really familiar with the different dye colors that I have and that I've used before, and how I think they'll play together.
I know, turquoise is definitely what I think of when I think of Yarn Baby. I think of that one that's in my profile picture. That turquoise.
This darker, yeah,
That's what
right?
I think of when I think of
Right.
Yarn Baby.
So is that evident? I saw somebody, oh, it was actually Hummingbird, in Boulder.
Hummingbird.
Yeah, and I saw her scrolling in my thing, and I was like, I know who dyed that before I saw her actual name. And I was like, she totally has a style. And then I was like, I wonder if people scroll upon mine and be like, that's got to be Yarn Baby's colorway, and then see, and they go, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
when we posted the black and white photos, people got Yarn Baby immediately.
I saw that, and the two people that guessed and got it right away, I was like, not surprised. Those two would get it.
Pat wants to know if you'll ever do Aloha, that colorway, in a fingering weight.
Oh. Sometimes I do, very rarely actually, I shouldn't even say sometimes, very rarely do I do a colorway on different weights, just because the colors respond different on different weights. The thinner the yarn, the more it will suck all of the dye color in more thoroughly, whereas if it's thicker, and it just, I can apply it the same way with the same amount of dye and with the same heat and the same acid, and if it's on a different thickness or a different weight, it responds differently, which is why sometimes I don't do similar colors on the same base. So something similar could happen, but this exact colorway, probably not. But this is a fairly, I mean, sport weights is just, right next door to the sock weight. It's pretty close.
That's interesting. I didn't know that about how, that makes sense though, that the different weights of yarn will suck up the dye differently. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the thinner the yarn, vibrant, bright colors are, my experience has been, I won't speak for everyone,
Do you ever do
easier on
sock
a thinner
blanks?
yarn. Do I do what?
Sock blanks?
Yes, and sock blanks are really fun to dye. They don't sell as well for me, which is why I haven't listed any for a while, but I have some that are not dyed that, I mean, making socks from a sock blank,
So fun.
I know, I love it.
So fun.
I seriously love it. You watch it unravel on this thing over here looking like this, and then you put it in a different, where you mix up the colors, and it's this completely different. It does not look,
Yeah.
I mean, they're similar, but it's a different, no, I really do. Sock blanks are fun. I saw that you dyed that one. And then you couldn't help it, and you're like, I'm going to pull a little black.
Yeah, I can't help myself.
I
never
know.
can.
I know.
Oh, yes, I can. And I don't think we have any more questions. Just me and Shannon hanging out now.
Which is nice because I really haven't seen many humans face to face for a year. Really. And the first time that I did was also here. I was thinking about that on the way down, that I was starting to feel like anxious, even like leaving my house, because I work from home and I don't have to leave my house, so I don't leave my house. So yeah, Christiana is probably one of, I could count on my fingers who I've seen in real life since COVID hit, and it's been almost a year, and she would be one of them. And it was almost a year ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy to even think about.
Yeah, this person.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and
Okay.
step on in.
Where is my mask?
Okay, cool. Well, we'll be on for just a couple minutes more, so if you have any more questions, please keep sending them our way. All of the products that Shannon showed you are on the website under the Fiber at 5 tab, under the shopping tab. We will have them under that tab for 24 hours. After 24 hours, we are pulling the product from the website, so get shopping. Also too, tonight we are having a special. Actually, for the next 24 hours, we're having a special. If you buy 3 skeins of Shannon's yarn, you can get our little digital scale for 25% off using the code SCALES when you check out. So if you don't have one of these, trust me, they are super, super handy. I never thought I'd need one, but then I found a pattern that I love that used just scrap yarn, leftover yarn from other projects, and it said, weigh it out, use half the yarn, and then when you get to half the yarn, then you start decreasing. And I'm like, crud, I don't have a scale.
Yeah, I just feel a lot.
So I'd like to publicly thank my mother for getting me one for Christmas, so thanks, Mom. And tonight our giveaway is one of these nice little digital scales, and Bryce ran our random number generator, and our winner tonight is Michelle DePrima. So I will get that sent out to you, Michelle. So thanks for tuning in. And were there any more questions we could send Shannon's direction?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay, awesome. So again, everything will be on the website for 24 hours. So about 6 o'clock tomorrow night, we will be pulling the product from the website. So if you see something you want, please act on it. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us once we go off the air, or send a Facebook message, and we will get right back with you. So I hope you all have a very lovely rest of your Sunday, and thank you, Shannon, for coming. Woohoo! All right. Oh, hey, Gloria. Hey, Terry. Yeah, I'm surprised how much I use my scale, too. So. All righty, well, have a lovely evening, everybody, and we will see you later.